Welcome to the comfy zone. Make yourself at home.
As a child, I was always fascinated by the ocean. I loved the way the waves crashed against the shore, and the sound of seagulls echoing through the salty air. Growing up in a coastal town, the beach was my playground, and I spent countless hours exploring the rocky shoreline and collecting shells. But as I got older, I began to notice something strange about the sea, something that no one else seemed to see. Whenever I looked out at the ocean, I could sense a presence lurking beneath the surface, watching me with cold, unfeeling eyes. At first, I dismissed it as my imagination, but the feeling persisted, growing stronger with each passing day. It was as if the ocean itself was alive, and it wanted something from me. One night, I decided to go for a swim, despite the warnings of my friends and family. As I dove into the cold water, I felt a sudden rush of fear and adrenaline, and I knew that something was terribly wrong. As I swam deeper, I could feel the water growing colder and darker around me, and I realized with a sinking feeling that I was no longer alone. There was something down there with me, something ancient and powerful, and it was hungry for my soul. I tried to swim back to shore, but it was too late. The thing had me in its grip, dragging me down into the depths of the sea, and as I struggled to break free, I heard a voice whispering in my ear, promising me unimaginable horrors in exchange for my loyalty. That was the last thing I remembered before I woke up on the beach, drenched and shivering with fear. And ever since that day, I've been haunted by the memory of what lurks beneath the waves, waiting to claim its next victim. I tried to tell people about what had happened to me, but no one believed me. They thought I had simply been caught in a riptide or had an intense nightmare. But I knew the truth. The ocean was alive, and it was not friendly. As the years passed, I began to research and study everything I could about the sea and its secrets. I read ancient texts and modern scientific studies, trying to uncover the truth behind my experience. And what I discovered was both terrifying and fascinating. The ocean was not just a vast body of water. It was a living organism, a creature beyond human understanding. And it was not alone. There were other beings like it, lurking in the depths of the ocean, waiting for the right moment to strike. I knew that I had to warn people about the danger that lay beneath the waves, but I also knew that they would never believe me. So I began to write, to share my experiences and my research with others who might be willing to listen. And as my words spread, I heard from others who had experienced similar encounters with the ocean's dark side. Some had seen strange creatures swimming in the depths. Others had heard whispers on the wind that chilled them to the bone. Despite my best efforts, I found myself growing more and more obsessed with the ocean and its mysteries. I spent long nights poring over ancient texts and scientific journals, searching for any clue that might help me understand what I had experienced. But the more I learned, the more I realized how little I truly knew. The ocean was a vast and complex entity, and it seemed that for every answer I found, a dozen new questions arose. I became increasingly isolated from the world around me, consumed by my research and my fear. And then, one day, I received a message from someone claiming to have the answers I was seeking. The message was cryptic and anonymous, but it spoke of a secret society of ocean researchers who had been studying the mysteries of the sea for centuries. They claimed to have uncovered knowledge that was too dangerous to share with the world at large, but that they were willing to share it with me. I was skeptical, but also intrigued, so I arranged to meet with the sender in a secluded location on the coast. When I arrived, I found a small group of people waiting for me. They were dressed in dark robes and their faces were hidden by hoods. They led me down to the water's edge, where a small boat was waiting. We set out into the open sea, and as we sailed further from shore, I began to feel a growing sense of unease. The people around me seemed to be chanting in a language I didn't understand, and the water began to churn and boil beneath us. And then, suddenly, I saw it. A massive creature, unlike anything I had ever seen before, rising from the depths of the sea. It had tentacles that writhed and wriggled like snakes, and eyes that burned with an otherworldly intelligence. The creature seemed to be speaking to me in a voice that echoed through my mind like thunder. It promised me power, knowledge, and immortality, if only I would pledge my allegiance to it. I was terrified, but also fascinated, and as I looked into those terrible, unblinking eyes, I knew that my life would never be the same. I tried to resist the creature's offer, but its words wormed their way into my mind, seducing me with promises of forbidden knowledge and power beyond imagining. And as the chanting around me grew louder, I felt myself begin to sway. But then something in the corner of my eye caught my attention. A glint of silver, a flash of movement. I turned my head and saw that one of the robed figures was holding a small knife. For a moment I was confused, but then suddenly it all clicked into place. These were not just random strangers who had contacted me. They were people I knew. People I trusted. I couldn't see their faces, but I knew their voices. I recognized the inflection, the tone, the subtle nuances that made them unique. And as I looked at the knife in the figure's hand, I knew what I had to do. I feigned a moment of indecision, and then lunged forward, grabbing the knife and plunging it into the creature's flesh. It let out a terrible scream, and then disappeared beneath the waves. The robed figures around me fell silent, staring at me in shock. For a moment, I wondered if I had just made a terrible mistake. But then, slowly, one of them began to clap, and then another. The clapping turned into cheers, and then laughter. And as the robes fell away, revealing the faces of my friends and family, I felt a wave of relief wash over me. As we sailed back towards the shore, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. My friends and family, who had just revealed to me their secret society, were acting different than they normally did. They seemed almost robotic, as if their personalities had been stripped away and replaced with something else entirely. It wasn't until we landed on the shore that they revealed their true intentions. "You have proven yourself worthy," said my best friend, who was now wearing a robe with a strange symbol on it. "You have defeated the creature and saved us all from its grasp. Now, you must take your place as our new deity." I was taken aback by their words. "What are you talking about? I don't want to be your deity. I just want to go home and forget about all of this." But they were insistent. They told me that I was the chosen one, the one who would lead them to enlightenment and protect them from the dangers of the sea. I tried to reason with them, but they wouldn't listen. They had already made up their minds, and as I watched them begin to kneel before me, I knew that I was in deep trouble. I couldn't just walk away. These were my friends and family, people who had been a part of my life for years, but I couldn't stay and lead them either. I didn't want to be a deity, and I didn't want the responsibility that came with it. So I did the only thing I could think of. I ran. I ran as fast as I could, away from the shore and the people who wanted to worship me. As I ran, I heard their cries and their pleas, but I didn't turn back. I had to get away, to find a way to make them see reason. But as I looked back one last time, I saw something that made my blood run cold. The people who had been my friends and family were now chasing after me, their eyes filled with a strange, almost fanatical light. I knew then that I was in real trouble. I didn't know how I was going to get out of this, but I knew that I had to keep running, to keep moving forward no matter what. Because if I didn't, I might never be able to escape their grasp. As I continued to run, my friends and family closed in around me, their words growing more and more strange and obsessive. "You are our chosen one, our savior," cried my sister, who had always been level-headed and logical. "Please, just come back with us, we need you," begged my father, who had always been the epitome of stoicism and strength. Even my ex-girlfriend, who I hadn't seen in years, was now among the crowd, her eyes filled with a strange, almost romantic light. "I always knew you were special," she said, her words suggestive and unsettling. I tried to reason with them, to make them see that I wasn't a deity, and that they needed to stop this madness. But their obsession only grew stronger, their voices blending together in a cacophony of strange, unintelligible words. And then, out of nowhere, a hand grabbed my arm, pulling me to a stop. I looked up, ready to defend myself, but it was only my childhood friend Rachel. "Please, just come with us," she said, her voice pleading. "We need you now more than ever." I was taken aback by her words. Rachel had always been a close friend, but she had never shown any romantic interest in me before. And yet, now, here she was, acting as if I was the only thing in the world that mattered. I tried to pull away, but her grip was surprisingly strong. "Rachel, please, let me go," I said, my voice shaking. But she wouldn't budge, and as the other members of the group closed in around me, I knew that I was in real danger. I didn't know what to do. I felt trapped, surrounded by people who I had once trusted, but who now seemed to be under the spell of some strange dark force. And as Rachel leaned in closer, her breath hot against my cheek, I knew that I was running out of time. As Rachel leaned in closer, her lips almost touching my ear, I braced myself for whatever was coming next. But what she did next was even more disturbing than anything I could have imagined. With a quick, sudden movement, she pulled a knife from her robe and held it to my throat. "You have to come with us," she said, her voice low and menacing. "You're our only hope." I could feel the cold metal of the blade against my skin, and I knew that I was in real danger. This was no longer my childhood friend. This was someone else entirely, someone consumed by madness and obsession. I tried to reason with her, to make her see that what they were doing was wrong, but she wouldn't listen. And as she pressed the blade closer to my throat, I knew that I had to act fast. With a sudden burst of energy, I pulled away from her, breaking free of her grip. I stumbled backwards, my heart racing with fear. And then, as if from nowhere, a strange, otherworldly voice filled the air.
"You cannot escape your destiny,"
it said, echoing across the beach. I turned to see where the voice was coming from, but there was no one there. Just the empty beach, the sound of the waves crashing against the shore. And then, with a sudden burst of light, everything went dark. I felt a searing pain in my head, and then everything went black. When I woke up, I was alone on the beach, the sun just starting to rise in the sky. My friends and family were nowhere to be seen, and there was no sign of the strange, otherworldly group that had tried to make me their deity. But as I stumbled back to my car, my head throbbing with pain, I knew that this was far from over. Something had awakened in me, something that I couldn't ignore. And I knew that I would have to face it head on, no matter what the cost. As I drove home, my mind was racing with questions. What had happened on the beach? Why had my friends and family acted the way they had? And what was that strange, otherworldly voice that had spoken to me? When I got home, I called my sister and asked her about the events of the previous night. But to my surprise, she had no idea what I was talking about. "What are you talking about?" she asked, her voice confused. "We didn't go to the beach last night. We haven't seen you in weeks." I was taken aback by her words. It was as if the events of the previous night had never happened, but I knew that they had. I could still feel the cold metal of Rachel's knife against my skin, still hear the strange, otherworldly voice that had filled the air. I tried calling my other friends and family members, but they all said the same thing. They didn't know what I was talking about. It was as if the events of the previous night had been erased from their memories. As I sat alone in my apartment, trying to make sense of what had happened, I felt a growing sense of unease. Something was very wrong here, and I didn't know how to fix it. And then, just as I was about to give up hope, I heard the strange, otherworldly voice again.
"You cannot escape your destiny,"
it said, echoing through my mind. I called Rachel and asked her what had happened at the beach, but she, like my sister and everyone else, claimed to have no knowledge of the events. "I don't know what you're talking about," she said, her voice laced with confusion. "Are you feeling all right?" I hung up the phone feeling even more lost and alone than before. Had I imagined everything that had happened, or was there something more sinister going on? Over the next few days, everything seemed to return to normal. My friends and family acted like nothing had happened, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. And then I noticed something strange. Nobody said no to me anymore. Whenever I asked for something, people seemed to go out of their way to make it happen. Even Rachel, who had always been stubborn and independent, seemed to be under my spell. I tried to brush it off, to tell myself that it was just a coincidence, but deep down, I knew that something had changed within me, something that I couldn't control. As the weeks turned into months, I found myself becoming more and more obsessed with the idea of power. I started to use my newfound influence to get what I wanted, no matter the cost. And then, one day, I woke up and realized that I had become the very thing that I had feared the most. I had become the deity that my friends and family had wanted me to be, but at a terrible cost. I was no longer in control of my own life, and as I looked around at the people who had once been my friends and family, I realized that I was completely alone. I had become a monster, and there was no going back.